Thank you, Mr. Guy. Veterans, friends, families, ladies and gentlemen, I am humbled to have the honor of the privilege to speak at this grand event. You have my unqualified gratitude for your generosity in recognizing veterans. I'd first like to give a shout out to my Aunt Hazel, sitting right back over there, and God willing, we will be on McNeil Brothers Farm this Thanksgiving Day enjoying our fine table. Many times I was in some difficult spots around the world, and I thought often when I'd get philosophical, why? Well, why is for the privilege that I can go sit at that table unmolested and enjoy myself. And if they call me tonight, I'll go tomorrow and I'll do it again because it's worth it. I'd also like to point out it was nice to see Ken Avett when I walked in the door today, and I'm just tickled to death to see that he still has hair. But just like me 2 or 3 years ago, he washed all the color out of it. But other than that, it's good to see some faces that I recognize. It's also good to be back in Faison, and I appreciate the adoption papers. But there are probably some, for some of the misdeeds I did in my youth, that would rather you have not done that. I did indeed spend some of the halcyon days of my youth, and as I said, as a teenager, I had some misspent days of my youth in the pool hall on Main Street, and some weekend nights in Twin Brothers. Would it be that all of us could walk just down the road to Mr. Headley Hadger's feed and seed store to get a knee-high grape and a moon pie? Or across the railroad tracks to Cecil McCullen's Pure Oil Station for a Coca-Cola and a pack of square nabs, and to watch all the out-of-state license plates as people went by on US 17 headed for the coast. Or for that matter, to go down to Twin Brothers Produce Shed to hear Cy Hardy and the Mighty Blue Notes do their version of the Isley Brothers Shout. Only those up on the front row understand all that. The produce market, as we called it, was an economic engine for the Faison area. It also was, along with churches, Friday night football, the tobacco market, and PTA meetings, one of the earliest forms of Facebook and Twitter. Everybody, even those separated by bad roads or no roads at all, limited telephone service, and what have you, traded information. They effectively communicated without the benefit of social media. Believe me, if Big Jim Taylor sold his green beans at $12 per basket, the Pate brothers over on Goshen Swamp knew about it before Big Jim got back to his farm in Taylortown. And green bean picking would begin in earnest along Goshen Swamp. From farm field to battlefield indeed, the Faison area was and is farmland. And from those acres and small little town enclaves, they came. They were our boys of summer. And in more recent years, our boys and girls of summer. Physically hardened by the rigors of farm work, imbued with a willingness to take risk on the unknown because farming is a risky business, and comfortable being part of a team because farming required a team of family and neighbors. They came to the produce market with bell peppers, cukes, or green beans to sell to supplement the meager incomes from tobacco or cotton. A good crop of pepper and good prices per basket could be the difference between a new Ford F-100 pickup truck or repairs to an old Chevrolet Apache. And there were others who, though they did not live on a farm, were nonetheless dependent upon agriculture. And of those, some, perhaps to avoid tobacco fields, got summer jobs at the produce market. They too learned risk and teamwork, because let me tell you, If somebody sold their peppers for $9 a basket and they still had some in the field and you didn't get downloaded quick, you were at great risk. But by their 18th birthday, and when they had finished school, their country called. A passage in the book of Isaiah in the Christian Bible goes something like this. And the voice of the Lord cried out, "Who shall we send? Who will go for us?" And I answered, "Here am I, Lord, send me." To be sure, when the call came, they answered the call. Instead of going to the produce market, they went to Fort Benning, Great Lakes Naval Training Center, Lackland Air Force Base, and Paris Island. In time, they became not just American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, but good American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. They were good at their military jobs just as they had been at their task on the farms or at the produce market sheds. They made their families, their communities, and their nation proud. They were ordinary men and women who did extraordinary things. They were then, and they are now, known around the world by friend and foe alike. So my most respectful salute to those of you who willingly have stepped up and who proudly wore the uniforms of America's armed forces. And while at this gathering there will be recognition of individual service, in my mind, we are here to celebrate a culture of dedication, of commitment, of service, of sacrifice, and perhaps most importantly, of answering our higher calling. Each of our American veterans is something special. Let me tell you an anecdote that puts that in perspective. Exactly what people think of you. In June 1999, when I was commanding the 82nd Airborne Division, I found myself with the honored privilege of leading a mass formation of paratroopers, marching from Lafayette Causeway, a kilometer or so, into the village square of the hamlet of Saint-Mère in France. The occasion was the 55th anniversary of D-Day, the invasion into Normandy, France, and the beginning of the liberation of Europe from Nazi tyranny. Tens of thousands of people mobbed that small piece of Norman real estate. It was a heady experience for a man who grew up just 7 miles down the road from here. After the obligatory speeches and greetings, somehow I was able to find myself alone in the middle of that throng of humanity. Saint-Mère was liberated by the 82nd on June the 6th, 1944. The history was well known to me, and I wanted simply to be alone in my thoughts about what it would have been like on that village square 55 years earlier. I stared at the replica of the parachute hanging from the church. I tried my best to imagine Private Red Steele suspended there, but all I could see was Red Buttons, the famous character actor who played Red Steele in that great movie, The Longest Day, on the cinema screens. I do not know how long I had been standing there and staring, but shortly a French accented English voice from behind me said, "You are him." I turned to see two aging, but nonetheless beautiful, noble women, and I said, "I am whom, madame?" And with the help of a translator, one said, "You are the commander of the 82nd Airborne Division." I said, "Yes, I am." "We were here that night." "You were where?" I asked. "Over there," the other responded, and pointing to the edge of the village square. "We were teenagers. We stayed until it was no longer safe. We saw your men shot as they hung from trees. We saw your men shoot those who shot their comrades. We saw men consumed by flames and explosions. It was unbelievable violence." The frailer of those two ladies began to cry softly, and after a moment she said, "These were extraordinarily brave men. Men who seemed to love one another. These were men sent by God." The aura of the moment had become a little highly emotional for me, and I was at a loss for the right words, but I felt compelled to say, ladies, I was born 1 year after the war ended. They both stared at me for a while until one said, that is not relevant. You are one of them. And to you American veterans, I say, and so are you. Once an American soldier, always an American soldier. Once a sailor, always a sailor. Once an airman, always an airman. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Once a coastie, always a coastie. When I was a young officer, I was befriended by a very senior officer who saw something in me that I did not see in myself. And he decided, as he said, you're worth saving. I'm going to try to get you on the right path. And I admit to being a wild cowboy when I was a young officer. He said, I want you to read this, and I want you to always remember it. And as long as you're an American soldier, try to deport yourself this way. I did for 40 years. I've been retired over 7 now, and I still try to deport myself this way. They are words from a famous American playwright. And in the waning years of the Great Depression, he felt compelled to pen this. It went something like this. In the time of your life, live, so that in that good time there shall be no ugliness or death for yourself or for any life your life touches. Seek goodness everywhere, and when it is found, bring it out of its hiding place, and let it be free and unashamed. Place in matter and flesh the least of the values, for these are things that hold death and must pass away. Discover in all things that which shines and is beyond corruption. Encourage virtue in whatever heart it may have been driven into secrecy and sorrow by the shame and terror of the world. Ignore the obvious, for it is unworthy of the clear eye and the kindly heart. Be the inferior of no man, nor of any man be the superior. Remember that every man is a variation of yourself. No man's guilt is not yours, nor is any man's innocence a thing apart. Despise evil and ungodliness, but not men of ungodliness or evil. These understand. Have no shame in being kindly and gentle, but if the time comes and the time of your life to kill, kill and have no regrets. In the time of your life, live, so that in that wondrous time you shall not add to the misery and the sorrow of the world, but shall smile to the infinite delight and mystery of it. It was my pleasure to be an American soldier, and my honor for 40 years. I know you feel the same way about yourself. Thank you for your hospitality and attention today. God bless all here, and God bless America.